Hello. If you're still targeting an LDL of less than 55 for your high-risk patients, you might actually be overtreating them, according to the new 2025 AACE Dyslipidemia Guideline. For every clinician managing cardiovascular risk, understanding these critical updates isn't just academic, it's absolutely essential for optimal patient care.
Just to set the stage, think about this number, 20.5 million. That's how many deaths globally were attributed to atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease in 2021 alone. It's a staggering figure and a powerful reminder of why refining our therapeutic strategies is so critical. Welcome to the Dr. Mech Explainer series. Our goal here is to distill pivotal clinical guidelines into clear, actionable intelligence for your practice. Please take a moment to review our disclaimer. Remember, the information we're presenting reflects the evidence at the time of publication and is meant to support, not replace, your own clinical judgment for individual patients. All the information for this explainer is taken from the following sources. So let's begin with the very foundation of management, the updated perspective on ASCVD risk assessment. The Guideline Task Force really dug into a fundamental question we all face in practice. Do these common risk enhancers we use actually improve our predictive accuracy in a meaningful way, beyond our standard calculators? And the data here is, well, it's pretty interesting. If you look at the change in the C statistic, which is basically a measure of predictive power, you can see that adding enhancers like apolipoprotein B gives you, frankly, a minimal improvement. The takeaway is that for broad general application, these tools offer very limited additional predictive value over the validated risk calculators we already have. Now let's see how that risk assessment philosophy carries over into the new pharmacologic recommendations, especially when we look at non-statin therapies. This table really lays out the current landscape. For the PCSK9 monoclonal antibodies, in those high-risk patients who are not at goal, we have a conditional recommendation. And yes, they do show a reduction of about 11 to 18 MIs per 1,000 patients. But, and this is an important but, a consistent mortality benefit just hasn't been established in the trials with a median follow-up of under 3 years. Bempedoic acid has now been very clearly positioned for a niche population, and that is the statin-intolerant patient. The guideline suggests its use conditionally, which means we have to balance that small but real reduction in MI against a moderate increase in adverse events like gout and tendon rupture, things that can lead patients to stop the therapy. You are watching the Dr. Mick Explainer series. All right, let's shift gears now and address the management of hypertriglyceridemia. This is an area where the guidelines offer some significant new clarity. The distinction they make here is absolutely critical. The guideline conditionally recommends pure EPA therapy, that's icosapent ethyl, and that's based on evidence showing it reduces MI by about 8 events per 1,000 patients. On the flip side, it conditionally recommends against the combination EPA plus DHA products. Why? Because they simply haven't shown a meaningful benefit and are actually linked to higher rates of stopping treatment due to side effects. And when it comes to niacin, this quote from the guideline really says it all. The task force issued a strong recommendation against using it. The evidence just points to a trivial potential benefit that is far, far outweighed by a real risk of serious harms and a huge increase in patients stopping the drug. Okay, now for what is arguably one of the most significant changes in this entire update, the LDL cholesterol treatment goal for our high-risk individuals. So, you'll remember the 2017 guideline recommended this more aggressive target of less than 55, and that recommendation was largely informed by the results of a single clinical trial. The 2025 guideline, however, now suggests a target of less than 70 milligrams per deciliter. The rationale here is that subsequent, large-scale meta-analyses of multiple trials just failed to consistently show that going to that more aggressive target gives you an additional benefit in reducing major CV events or overall mortality. So let's pull all of this together and consolidate these updates into the most critical, practice-changing takeaways. Okay, so for your day-to-day clinical practice, first, we're adjusting the LDL-C goal to less than 70 for high-risk patients. Second, it's time to deprescribe niacin, given its unfavorable risk-benefit profile. It's also crucial to be very specific with omega-3s, choosing pure EPA over those combination products. Bempedoic acid should now be reserved for that specific niche of statin intolerance. And finally, continue to rely on standard risk calculators as your primary tool because the enhancers have shown pretty limited utility for general screening. You have been watching the Dr. Mac Explainer series. To stay current with essential practice updates just like these, please make sure to subscribe and enable notifications. We'll conclude with a final thought. This guideline, with all of its conditional recommendations based on what are often modest absolute benefits, really underscores a central theme: the irreplaceable role of us, the clinicians. Our ability to interpret this complex evidence and then engage in a nuanced, shared decision-making process with each individual patient, well, that's now the true cornerstone of effective dyslipidemia management. Thank you for your time.